Welcome to Turn a Page, the official comic book club for Nerd Initiative. Each week, the NI Bullpen will be covering the world of comics, talking to creators, deep diving into some fantastic stories, and much more. Now let's hand it over to the team and turn a page.
And what is going on, everyone? It is Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you are tuned in for another edition of Turn a Page, the official comic book club for Nerd Initiative. My name is Ken M. You know me as the host of the ODPH podcast. I'm also Nerd Initiative editor-in-chief. To my right, your left at home, we have a very special guest. You know him as the guy behind the scenes, maybe the guy in the chair, if you will, if you watch the show regularly. But he's also the host of the 3FM podcast, and he's also the head of wrestling coverage and the host of Wrestling Night Live every Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Nerd Initiative. Please give a warm welcome to the one lady, Rich.
That is correct. And yeah, it's good to be in front of the camera. Usually I'm behind the camera at this point in juncture, but here I am in front of the camera. And hey, I get to talk comic books, which I review for the Bullpen every single week as well, just throwing it out there. And I also get to talk pro wrestling today. So it's like my happy place. So this is awesome to be here. Thanks for having me back on the camera side of things at Turn a Page.
Oh, absolutely. And we have special guests on the line too, because there is a book that is out via Comixology Originals that is having fans ask, did Chris Castro finish the story? Because one of the best books out this year has combined the worlds of pro wrestling with murder, mystery, and action, and gives you just an amazing experience. And we're fortunate enough to have the creators back on the line. Please welcome from Hard Style Juice, Clay McCormack and RICARDO LÓPEZ-ORTIZ. Guys, thank you for coming back on.
Thank you for having us. Excited to be here.
Yes.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having us again. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, because this book has been a staple for me and Rich and a lot of members of the Bullpen, because we're big wrestling fans. And we do love our drama and we do love our comics. And this series literally has it all. Issue number 5 dropped on Comixology today as we're recording. But in case anybody isn't familiar with the story for whatever reason yet, give us a quick recap of what has been going on in the world of the Castros.
Well, Hardstyle Juice is a professional wrestling murder mystery story about a pro wrestling family named the Castros. And after a tragedy happens in the ring, they kind of are struggling with whether or not it was an accident or if it was intentional, and it sends one of the family members down this road of revenge and dealing with grief and all these trust me, it's not as depressing as it sounds. It's actually a lot of fun, but it's about the youngest daughter of the family, Chris Castro, kind of using professional wrestling as an outlet to work through her own feelings, and also to take out some aggression on people she might think are responsible for the death in her family.
Yeah, it's an amazing story, and watching Chris's journey to discover who killed Ray Castro has been just such a phenomenal read. I mean, Rich, what'd you say?
Oh yeah, I've been loving everything I've read in this book, and it's just super awesome. And it reminds me, coming up into this final match, there's a line that Mona says, and I'm gonna read the quote because I just really liked it. There are no heroes, no villains, just people who make mistakes. And I wanted to get your guys' thoughts. Obviously, being putting it together, does she see herself rather than see this in herself rather than everyone else, or is this kind of just a generalization? I just thought it was just a deep quote for that character.
I think she sees it in herself as well as everybody else, because at that moment in the story, the person she's talking about more than anybody else is herself, because she's gone down this path that she was so sure was the right one, and now it's looking a little bit more unsure. And she's been living with a certain understanding of the world because of the way she's grown up in this wrestling family and everything that she's been experiencing as far as the business goes, and how the theatrics of professional wrestling create such a black and white world that when she's presented with the real world, it's not quite as easy as that. Never is, unfortunately.
Very true.
Very true. Very true. And especially talking about the business of wrestling, we do get a lot of different perspectives of it, because, I mean, deals with independent pro wrestling. There's a lot of very unique business deals, shall we say, especially with one Jack Renault, who has his hands in the Castro family business and really kind of gives the readers a version of Dark Side of the Ring that does come with the territory. And I was going to say, how is this so important to explain to the audience? Because we always know what we see on TV and everything's like the bright lights, the big city, but to really kind of bring it to this level, and especially the dealings going on with King Castro and Jack.
Well, you know, when we started this, I think Ricardo and I both wanted to keep it as real as possible as far as the hi Rick, as far as the characters go. And you know, watching the Dark Side of the Ring stuff, and you hear all these stories, you watch that McMahon documentary, and it just creates this. It really kind of puts into perspective that there is behind all of the glitz and glamour, all of the big broad lights and explosions and everything. It's just people, and people do shitty things.
Yeah.
You know, they're not necessarily pure evil. Well, maybe some of them are, but generally it's people making decisions that they think are good for themselves at the time that aren't good for other people. And it's unfortunately that's the reality of most of the world. Not to sound too cynical, but so yeah, we just wanted to kind of find that balance between the operatic action of wrestling and the almost banal reality of what is the underpinnings of everything.
Yeah, because I think you definitely hit it on the head too, because like I say, this story is not just a wrestling story. And that's something I think a lot of readers really, when they start diving into this, you see there's so much more to this. And especially with the style of wrestling that goes on here. And Ricardo, I mean, I got to ask you about this, because the ring work that you've been inspired by to bring to panel here has been always phenomenal, from bell to bell and page to page. But especially going into the final match and dealing with, you know, the deathmatch style of wrestling. Like, this is something that, how do you try explaining this to the audiences just seeing this for the first time?
Sorry, you got a little cut off at the beginning of like your question. Can you like repeat it?
Oh, no problem. So like I say, especially with dealing like with the action that you've been putting on from page to page, like I say, the wrestling art that you're presenting, like, this is so realistic to wrestling fans. So like I say, this is what we see on TV each week. But dealing with the deathmatch style, which is a very acquired taste, was to try bringing that to life here. Was there anything like, how would you describe this genre bringing it to the wrestling fans or to the comic fans?
Yeah, I thought like it was more like about making it like feel exaggerated and bombastic, because it is pretty brutal and extreme. But at the same time, like, I tried to make it feel like there was like a lot more power to it, and trying to like make things feel grander than they actually are. Even though, you know, it's still a wrestling match and like there's still a lot of action going on and stuff. So it's a tough thing to balance. But I think the important thing is that like whatever we're doing in the matches helps tell the story of like the actual narrative arc of the characters. So like a lot of the matches and stuff, like if you see what the characters are going through outside of the ring, it tends to kind of bounce off each other and balance each other. So I think that's kind of like what the balance that tried to like bring to it. That even though it's, you know, deathmatch wrestling, it's really extreme, it doesn't mean that it's not telling a story like just any other match, like just a regular match would do.
Absolutely. I mean, it is definitely a niche audience. And the last time we talked, you know, I am in that niche audience as well. I mean, I watch a little bit of everything. So with that being known, and the careful work that you guys always put into, you know, the book and the story, going into that death match and with the audience and everything, and obviously having editors and everything else, was there anything you wanted to do that you couldn't do in the match? You know, whether it was a story that you wanted to put in there, or, you know, if the like graphic wise, you know, that maybe somebody was like, oh, maybe not, or even if you were like kind of pulled back from going into that final death match in the book.
For me, I don't know if there wasn't anything that I didn't get to do, but there's some things that I wished I could have given a little bit more space to, because, you know, unfortunately we're bound by 22, 23 pages or so. So you kind of have to, that's part of the business, part of the job is how do you tell your story in a constrained space like that. And so when we actually, when I started kicking around and started building the final issue, I did all these outlines, and I'm going through these outlines, and I'm like, Jesus, this match doesn't even start until like page 13. You know, I need to figure out how to, we need to figure out how to get the information that we need out as quickly as possible so we can have as much of the match breathe as we can. But at the same time, we're a little bit, you know, it's a book about wrestling, and every match has had a wrestling match in it, and we've tried to keep it as varied as possible. So to just do another wrestling match, you know, it could get a little bit old. So you kind of have to pick your battles as to figure out what's the most dynamic way to get in and out of the situation, you know. So there's one moment in particular, I guess you could call it a near fall, that I wish I initially had wanted to give that a little bit more rope to breathe, but I think it ended up working okay as we put it in there. But
absolutely. Ricardo, is there anything that you would have liked to add in, or
the stuff that like I had like no pushback on anything that I drew, so it was like, cool, let's just go for it. So everything like worked out on my end. If anything, like I wish we'd just like Clay said, we had like more pages to do more things. But yeah, everybody was cool, so it worked out that way.
There's one bit towards the end that Rick made much more interesting than how I had written it, because just not, I guess it's not real epic of a spoiler, but there's a scene where the way that I had it written, King Castro chops somebody in the shoulder, in the chest, and then Candy throws him into the ring post. And when I got the pages back, Ricardo had drawn Candy doing like a backflip off the ropes with a chair and like double kneeing the guy in the head. And I'm like, oh, I mean, that's better. We could just,
that is definitely a great addition. And as the fact that I got to read it, it comes across super awesome. Like, I got to say that as far as like on a side thing, somebody who's watched and consumes a lot of pro wrestling, the one great thing about, I can say to sell anything for your book, is that every book, every match feels like it doesn't just look like, you know, it's on a page, obviously you're flipping through, it's a comic, but you can really actually see the action. It really kind of draws you in. You almost find yourself in that spot where you start wanting to break out familiar wrestling chants during the match. That's how I've always read it. I'm like, you know, kind of picking the spot. And of course, you know, from my background and being a booker in pro wrestling for a little while, I'm looking at it going, oh man, this is the part of the match where we want the crowd to, you know, chant, "This is awesome," or "This is the part of the match where we're gonna get the dueling chant," and you just kind of feel, and it just starts getting it going. You're like, this is awesome. And I'm not saying anything bad, because I've read some other great wrestling comic books, but I'll tell you, I just love the in-ring action that Hardstyle Juice brings to the table. It's great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I
think I was going there for because I remember like I saw that part and I was kind of like and behind the scenes we talked about a lot about Candy's like background and stuff, and how, you know, we want to flesh it out more and all that stuff. And, you know, you see kind of hints of it in like it's the issue before this one, right? Where you see like the
issue number 4
and stuff, a poster. Yeah. And so I was kind of like, but I wanted it to kind of show that like both of them were like, even King at one point were like, you know, really good wrestlers. And so that's why I was like, you know, I'm gonna make this like some kind of like tag team move where he just like, you know, lariats the dude, and at the same time she's like coming down off the top rope and stuff. So I kind of like wanted that to be kind of like a "you still got it" moment, where like, you know, an old guy does something crazy in the ring, you know, and you're like, whoa, Sting just jumped off a balcony. That's crazy. He's old.
Yeah, and as far as the crowd stuff goes, you know, that was always very present in my mind as we were writing. But again, what Ricardo did to make it so much feel so much more of a piece of everything is he started putting a lot of the crowd dialogue kind of as backgrounds in certain panels, and it's just such a cool design element that really kind of ties it all together. And because, you know, how many times can you have like one bubble with like 4 things coming out of it being like the crowd's yelling stuff? It doesn't always land the way you want it to.
Right.
So, you know, thankfully between Ricardo and our amazing editor, DC Hopkins, they really made it kind of shine.
Yeah, and it definitely comes across that way. Like for us, the wrestling fans, and I've shown this book to other fans too, and they're just like, this is probably like the closest it feels like to watching a match unfold and really kind of getting the vibe. And like what Rich was talking about too, waiting for that moment for the crowd to pop, and you can hear the crowd chanting. And it's just one of those experiences that until you go to a wrestling match live, like you don't know about. You can see it on TV, sure, but it's like if you ever go to a show live, you get that feeling, and especially too seeing Chris's rise in this world. Like it's just something that coming into it, being in the family too, you have just such a different history element going on too, and it really all kind of poses a question too. She got into this side of the business because her brother died, but do you think that she still would have gone into wrestling, win, lose, or draw, or do you think it would just been like she was going to go to college like she planned and never had the itch?
I think she would have gone to college. I don't entirely know if she would never have gotten involved, because I think it's very possible she could have gone to college and realized that maybe this wasn't exactly what she wanted. But you know, her whole thing has Chris's whole angle as a character in this book is that everything she does, whether she realizes it or not, she's doing for her family. So her going to college and going to business school is really ultimately so she can help the family business. And so to her, she at the very beginning of the series, to her, she sees it as getting away from everything. But I think ultimately she's going to get her business degree and come back and probably run the promotion or help her father run the promotion. I don't know if she ever really thought she would get in the ring, but I don't think she would be straying too far from it for that long.
No, that's fair. Because like I say, for her progression within the issues, like she's just a natural. And it's one of those that I would say in kind of comparison, like when Kurt Angle came in, it was just a natural thing for him to adapt to pro wrestling, or even what we've seen like with Logan Paul, love him or hate him, like when he goes in the ring, he's a natural at it. And you see that with Chris, and especially with Ricardo with the art too, is just she's so fluid in the moves, and especially, you know, doing all the different styles, because it's not just deathmatch wrestling that goes on, even though it does happen. You're seeing her just combine so many elements. Like, what would you say would be the biggest influence of wrestling style on her character?
I was looking at when I first started thinking about that, I mostly watched a lot of 90s like All Japan women's wrestling. So it's like a lot of Kandori and Akira Hokuto and Manami Toyota and Devil Masami and Bull Nakano from, like, you know, so because that's like kind of like they're all, because like American like women's wrestlers tend to be on the bigger kind of slower side, like, and when you watch like the Japanese wrestlers, or even like, because I started also watching a bit of like the CMLL women's division, and they're also like the Mexican and Japanese women wrestlers are so fast compared to like the American wrestlers. And, you know, considering that she's also, you know, Latina, I figure that like she would have like a lot of, it'd be more like that kind of style than like an American style. So that's why like I was looking into. So like Starlight Kid was a big inspiration for her, because, you know, she's known for like speed titles and all that stuff. Asami as well. And yeah, it's that's kind of like where I started with her.
Great inspiration for that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a great place to pull a lot of the inspiration from. So I know when we had you in before the first book came out, We had asked you, and I want to go back to this question now. Now the 5 issues for volume 1, we'll say, is done, because we'll put that positive energy out there.
Yeah.
Because if you're not reading this book, you need to go out and read it right now. I promise you that much.
Absolutely.
Even if you're not a wrestling fan, there's a lot of heart in it. And this is a great comic, bar none. But if you're a wrestling fan, you're doing yourself a big disservice if you're not reading. So what we asked you back then was, what character was your favorite to work on and why? So now that you've gone through the first volume, that may or may not have changed. So I'm going to offer it up to both of you. Obviously, Ricardo with drawing and Clay, of course, writing. Who was your favorite character to like work on, and why?
You want to go first, Rick?
You can take this one first.
that means we're both thinking about it.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, it goes to show, I mean, how many great characters there are in this book. Like, you think about everybody from Burly Bill to King Castro to Boris Gash and then Jack Renault, and like there's inspirations like for watching wrestling, like you can kind of see the homages to. So I mean, there's so many great ones to pick.
I think at the time, at the first episode, the first time we talked about it, I think I probably said Candy, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And I think that's still, I think she's still my favorite, because you know, what we did with her in the 4th issue, we kind of tease a bit of where she came from and what her story is about. And I find her to be a real well of potential for stories. Because I feel like she's the kind of character in the story who has the least amount of screen time, but is probably a little bit more mysterious than everybody else because of it. And so, because you've got the family dynamic, and that sort of is easily recognizable. You know what's going on with Chris. You know what's going on with the bad guys and everything. But Candy's a little bit of not a blank slate, but she's a little bit harder to read in terms of what her motivations are and where she's from or how she feels about everything. And so, getting to drop in a little bit of her, a hint of her backstory in issue 4 was exciting, because if only because who knows if we'll ever get to tell it. So I wanted to put a little bit of it in there, but I think it makes her a pretty interesting, compelling character to come back to in the future. Well, not because I think everybody else are great characters. I think we could tell a lot of stories with Chris. We could tell a lot of stories with King. But Candy is the kind of character that I really want to sink my teeth into, who's got a little bit of a gray background, who might not be the person you think she is, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, with her, you also got the angle of like, well, how does she even know the Castros? How did that happen? Yeah. So it's got a lot of cool, like, avenues to go with her. I think I said Ray maybe in the first one.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, and I think by the end, I think Chris was my favorite, just because like, when you're like drawing a comic and you first start, you kind of like, it's like you're getting to know somebody at first, and you're like, you're just trying to figure out like how they work, like how you're gonna draw them, like what makes them who they are. So like by the end, I feel like I really had her down and like figured out like exactly how to draw her and stuff. And just like with having her character, with like how Clay wrote it, just like I think she has like a really good arc of like that just made it like really fun to draw what she was going through and like how she managed to do things at the end.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's like I said, even if you're not a wrestling fan, the comics, just the arc in a comic sense for Chris is just like it's that hero's journey.
Yeah,
where you start off, it's the burden you didn't want necessarily, but it's the burden you have to take on, and then it becomes like its own adventure on its own as you grow into the hero, if you will, putting in the terms of if it was a superhero book. And I think that's just masterful. That's why I said you don't even have to be a wrestling fan to enjoy the book, because it's it's a superhero book still. It's still a comic, but just with wrestling. And I know we talked about it the first time. Wrestling in comics, just they're here. It's the same thing, you know. It's good versus evil. It's protagonist, antagonist, and is there gray areas? Absolutely, but it's all about the build, because the best wrestlers, whether they're a face or a heel, is the same thing as a comic hero or a villain. They have the best stories, and their journey is what makes them. So you nailed it on it.
As far as characters go in stories, it's you know, it's always interesting, like Rick was saying, as far as drawing them, you're getting to know them. I think the same thing happens a lot when you write too, because a little bit of a director commentary. I originally had a much darker ending for this book, where most of the events sort of played out the same way in the final issue, but it was going to end with Chris basically turning her back on her family and going out on the road by herself. And that had been what I had in mind as we were putting everything together and as I was writing it. But then as I was writing it, I was like, man, King Castro's a great character. I mean, it would be such a shame for this guy with such a great dynamic look to just sort of like throw him to the side. And Candy's such a great character. Maybe the three of these characters should stick together for a while. So we had to tweak things a little bit.
The more like we got into the issues, like I feel like it also felt like Chris wouldn't do that. Like it was kind of like a thing of like, nah, she would not, like, you know, storm out and, you know, say screw all of them and leave them, you know, like it
and
felt
also
like kind of like against her character.
And also at the point we get her to by the end of the fourth issue, we got to get a little bit of lightness in there at the end. You know, it just can't be all depressing. As much as like a personal Pyrrhic victory or whatever would be great from a writing standpoint, I don't know if it would be the most crowd pleasing way to end a book. So
yeah, it just wasn't time for the heel turn yet. You have to hit the face peak. You have to hit that face peak before you can do the heel turn. Because if you hit the heel turn too soon, it's not going to work out. You know, that's what you find. The same thing goes the other way around. That's why you have Roman Reigns right now. You know, you gotta hit that height of the heel peak, and then you're going to get the crescendo of the face peak. So I thought that good change, good switch up. Because I think if you made her heel at the end there and walks out on the family, people are going to.
Well, I shouldn't say that she wasn't going to be a heel as much as, you know, her, as I was saying before, her kind of drive through the story is that she does everything for the family. And then once she realizes that the family is not exactly the supportive element she thought it was, she decides to remove herself from that and start doing things for herself. Which I still think is a valid way for her to go. But as everything was coming together, I was like, this family just feels like the resolution here needs to involve the family sticking together more than breaking it apart at this point anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah, because especially by the time you get to issue 5, you go through the journey not only with Mona, but you go through it with King Castro himself, because he comes off the first issue as a very cold promoter, just, you know, in it for the dollars. And then you just see him metamorph into like the father that she's looking for, especially once Jack throws down the ultimate fight, if you will, for issue 5. And to see that dynamic progress, I mean, was that something that you just want to make him as multi-layered as possible, so you don't have exactly like the typical evil promoter, and you want to kind of show there's more sides to him?
Oh, sure. Yeah. That was another instance where, as I originally conceived of that character, he was not an evil promoter, but he was someone who always put business first above anything else. And so the things that were happening around him, to his family, were always going to end up with him on top, regardless of how it hurt anybody else. And as we were working through it, that was another thing where it's like, well, okay, but where do you go from there? You need to, the character, as I was writing it, felt like it was dying for a face turn, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so I was like, no, there has to be something at the end that makes it feel more like there's more to it than him just being business minded, because that's the way everybody talks about him through the book. And so to finally let him talk and give his side of the story, it needed to be a little bit more than what you expected it to be.
Yeah, and it definitely comes off that way too, because you think you know where the story goes, and there's so many curves thrown in this, which is great because where I like for me as a reader, I know where I was issue 1, and by the time we get to issue 5, like I'm already starting to put together like my different board of theories. Okay, like what happened here, and like I think I have an idea now, but I'm still not even sure. But that's the great part of the story that you did, because we have just all these different routes we go with all these different characters. And then especially mixing in the action with the ring, but it's even the drama behind the scenes. Like you can kind of see, you know, the pure evilness in Jack, so to speak, the confliction in King, Mona still trying to figure out what her true destiny is. Like there's so much in this for everybody that it really is a story that I think just it's going to win over. It should be winning over people left and right. And obviously where the story is finished for now, is there ideas for a second volume or more stories kind of spinning out? Because me personally, I think I need a Ray prequel.
Well, yes. You know, the beauty of this story that we've created is that we always intended it to be something you could do more episodically, or more, you know, I hate using television terms because comics used to do this all the time too, where it's just, you know, an issue is an issue, or 2 issues are 2 issues, and then you can tell a different story. And part of the genesis of the idea was that going on the road with a wrestling show lends itself to that sort of structure, which makes it no different than like the Incredible Hulk TV show, or, you know, Have Gun Will Travel, or The Fugitive, or something like that, where it's you're going to a new town, you're meeting new people, you get involved with those new people, and then you move on. That happens in mystery television shows, it happens in comic books, it happens in wrestling. So there's really, you know, the sky is the limit as far as what we could do with the book moving forward. As I already said, Candy's got a whole bunch of interesting stuff I want to get into. I think there's plenty of room to get into what Ray's about. Obviously, the way we leave the book implies that there's quite a lot going on there that we haven't gotten into yet. But hopefully, yeah, we'll get the chance to break it all down.
Yeah, I mean, we need it because, like I said, after seeing that last page, and trust me, that is a mic drop moment. I was sitting there going like, wait, this is it? Wait, no, like where's issue number 6? Like I need more. And that's how you know you have a great story at hand.
Well, I think I said this in the first time we talked, but one of my big inspirations for this book was actually Twin Peaks. And when we were coming up to the ending, I was like, yeah, I remember how season 2 of Twin Peaks ended. So let's make sure that we have as equal of an impact as that show does, to make sure people remember this when they read it.
Yeah.
I think you succeeded, but now all of a sudden I got hijacked because you're mentioning like the old Incredible Hulk TV show. Now I'm just imagining King Castro having to go to different territories and walking through, and then you get to, you know, the sad music at the end as he strolls out of the town into the next town.
Well, that's the thing, that originally the idea was imagine that, but it's Chris Castro who's hitting the road at the end of every issue, you know, with the music behind her or whatever. But I think having the 3 of them as a unit moving forward allows for a lot of different stories, and you can thread a lot of different subplots and stuff in there. So I think it's definitely beneficial to have everybody stick around.
Yeah,
I know Rick
better balance as well to, like,
yeah,
you know, the characters and stuff and what we can do with them as they go on.
And not to get too into the weeds about, you know, character theory or whatever, but having 3 characters always is a nice balance. You know, you've got your Spock, Kirk, and McCoy kind of dynamic, where you've got the person who's driving it, but then the other 2 are kind of the either sides of their conscience, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's always a nice dynamic to play with. I know Rick wants us to go to Japan, which I also really would like to get us to go to Japan at some point.
Yeah, because it's mostly for like the Candy stuff, because like, you know, because it's already been hinted at that, like she spent time over there and stuff like that. I think like something like that would be cool. I know that originally I like after we started like creating the characters and stuff, and we created Ray, I was kind of like can we just have like a whole issue where it's just him and like he dies way later on? Like I was like, can he die at like the end of issue 5 or something? Can we like move all of this? Can we do like I was kind of like, let's do like a bait and switch where like, you think that like he's the main character for like a good while, and then it turns out like, oh, he's dead.
Trust me, if money and time was not an object, we would have done that because I love that shit. So
hey,
but
listen,
I think we still kind of pulled it off a little bit in issue 1. I think it works. You still think that he's, because we presented it was like, oh, he's like such a huge deal in that first issue. So
that's why it's so difficult to talk about, because I keep changing the language I use between her brother gets killed or there was a tragedy. Because if you say her brother gets killed, it's like, oh well, I know what happens now in the first issue, but it doesn't matter. It's about more than the death. The death is just the way to get into the story. So
yeah,
absolutely. And you could always, I was going to say, you can always go the Dallas route. If you decide in volume 2, it's just in the shower in the back at a show. None of it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Just always pretend that this road, that would throw away the other story. So it's kind of like, but yeah, I can definitely see all 3 of them going on the road. Japan would be awesome.
That would be amazing.
That'd be a great adventure. Lots of stuff there. Now I was looking at the time, and the comic fans, sorry, I'm going to hijack this for a minute because I did this last time too, because it's like the selfishness in me to talk wrestling. Right now, like last time we were talking, I know we, especially me and you, Ricardo, were talking a lot more about Japanese wrestling. But what are you guys watching right now? It's just the current things. What do you like and what's going on in the world of wrestling? What are you watching? What are you paying attention to these days?
I'll get my boring stuff out of the way quickly so you guys can get into it. I actually think I've been watching NXT quite a bit.
Yes.
And their women's division is unbelievable. Like, it is stacked. I don't know if they're going to have to find more room for these women when they eventually bring them up, or even if they don't. I mean, they have enough people down there to create their own compelling thing. They've just got, but between, not to mention just the women who are coming up naturally through the system, with Julia coming in and Stephanie Vaquer, it's going to be even better. I think they're doing some really great stuff.
And I'm still waiting for the surprise, because technically speaking, tonight could be the debut of Delta on the CW. She still hasn't made her debut yet, but we know she put pen to paper, so she's definitely on her way. So it kind of looks like you have this whole perfect realm. I've been really actually paying a lot more attention to NXT lately myself. And it's not that I didn't ever give up on it, but sometimes it kind of went into the background.
Sure.
And like, I don't know, I in the last few months, it's definitely felt like I like at the height of like the black and gold original version of NXT, it's almost gotten back to that level, and even greater than that in the women's division. And that was a great women's division back then too.
Phenomenal.
Obviously you had the wrestling's 4 horsewomen coming up in that era, Asuka coming over and being the big signee in that era as well. And I really feel like the women's division now even is, in NXT in particular, is just that next level above. Not only do they have homegrown talent, indie talent, that they've now homegrown talent. And then of course now bringing in like massive stars from Mexico and obviously Japan. And then the forbidden door with TNA, if you will, stealing the term there, has been just really paying off. And the Jordan Grace stuff was just amazing. Like seeing her involved in that and where that's gone. And I'm expecting big things coming up, because October is upon us. So that means Bound for Glory is coming up. I'm still crossing the fingers that we get AJ Styles at Bound for Glory. And I keep teasing the fact that I hope the North reunites in NXT. I just want to throw it out.
Don't give me hope, Rich.
Let's just go out on a whole rampage. So Ricardo, what have you been watching lately?
I've been mostly watching just AEW for the most part, and just kind of like, I haven't had a chance to been a bit busy lately, so I haven't had a chance to keep up with like a lot of the Stardom stuff and the New Japan stuff. So it's mostly just been AEW and kind of like keeping track of like some of the indie stuff going around like on social media and stuff like that. Same with like Stardom and New Japan, just kind of like, all right, let's see what's going on over there. But yeah, it's mostly just been AEW for the most part. So that's kind of like, which I think they've been doing like a really good job lately. So I've been enjoying the shows a lot.
the in-ring stuff is great over there.
Mm.
It always is. I mean, obviously coming up tomorrow, you got Ricochet versus Will Ospreay, which I mean that's a sellout in any that's a couch or a building should be a building sellout
Oh
too.
my God, yeah.
That sells me on watching two guys. The New Japan thing right now is kind of weird because it is that weird zone where you're kind of just waiting for Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah,
it's like the gift and the curse of the G1, the gap between the G1.
Yeah, because the G1 this year was amazing.
Mhm.
Like Zack Sabre Jr. winning, like that was
Who
so
saw that coming?
freaking
Yeah.
cool.
So good.
I love that guy, and I'm glad that he's finally getting that big push because he's deserved it for like so long. Like he's always been the guy that like, you know, he's almost everybody has like an amazing match with him. Like he can have an amazing match with like, you know, freaking broomstick. So like it's just like I'm so glad that he's finally, you know, they're like, all right, let's go all in on Zack Sabre Jr. and like to be like the second guy ever that's like not Japanese to win the G1. Like that's crazy.
Only other guy to do is Kenny Omega.
Yeah. It's like, so like it's a great company to be in. So
you know what's been really fun, especially recently for me watching wrestling, is now you know, being old, I now realize that I've been able to see these performers who I was introduced to when they were kind of in more of their prototypical era figure it out and just rocket through the stratosphere. Like I was talking to my girlfriend not too long ago around the time that Becky Lynch kind of like backed away, because I'm a massive Becky Lynch fan. And I said to her, I don't think I've ever watched the entirety of a wrestler's career before. It kind of, you know, bugged me out a little bit that I've basically been watching her entire career. Then, I mean, not to say that she's done, but
right.
But you know, and looking at some of the other wrestlers like Zack Sabre Jr., who the first time I saw him was probably the Cruiserweight Classic, which was like 10 years ago, and to see. You watch him then and you go, oh yeah, this guy's really got something, but I'm not really sure what it is yet. And then now he's figured it out. You know, he's put on a little bit of weight. He's got the hair going, he's got his whole thing. Toni Storm is another one who she was always great, but then you see the moment where she figures it out and she moves into that next level. Same with Swerve and Ospreay. You know, Ospreay's been around forever. Kind of just as, oh yeah, he's the guy who does the flippy stuff, but now he's figured it out and he's found that presence and that character that has really sent him to the next level. It's really fun to get to see these people find that mark and just go for it.
Yeah, that's one of the best things about wrestling, though, is you definitely get to see, especially if you start watching, you know, if you're watching a bunch of different things, you get to see where they came up and from. And then you also get to see the change in trends and where you go. I mean, perfect example, Will Ospreay, known mostly for doing the flippy stuff, as you pointed out. And then he puts on a little bit of weight, decides he's going to be more of a heavyweight. That doesn't mean he still doesn't do the athletic stuff, because he still does. But with that, he finds this Billy Goat character, if you will, instead of just the aerial assassin. And now he is the guy. You know, there's in baby faces in wrestling, probably the only person above him, well, two people would be Roman and Cody.
Yeah.
And that's good. That's rarefied air to be in. You know what I mean? Especially when Roman Reigns is really the top guy in all of pro wrestling. And Cody Rhodes is probably the best white meat baby face we've had in ever.
I wouldn't call Roman a baby face just yet.
Yeah, but he's getting that baby face.
The crowd receives him like a baby face, but I don't think he's a baby face.
I think he's walking that line. It's that Steve Austin. So, you know, he's going to be booked like in the situations where he's a face, but he's not always going to do that face thing. He's going to be on that edge.
It needs a little for him to like, when they do it, it's going to be incredible. Like he'll definitely be like the top baby face for sure.
Well, eventually what they'll do is the double switch.
Yeah. Like that's when, like, I hope that's where it's going. I was like, Hangman and Swerve have been incredible. Like, I think to me, that's what they've been doing, like character wise and match wise, is the best total package of storytelling and in-ring that we've had like this past year now, because they've been going at it for a while now. It's like completely changed like Hangman's character, and same with Swerve's character, and just like the match catalog that they put together is quite it's second to none, like as a rivalry. So they've been amazing. Like when Hangman like burned his family's house down, that was amazing.
Yeah.
That was like
as
so
soon as
good.
that video came out, I was like, oh, that house is going up in flames, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I love the little things that they've done, because like even post that last match at the pay-per-view, and like when Hangman's walking through the back and he's going up to people he used to be friendly with, you know, specifically the Dark Order, and they just look at him and I don't even know you anymore, and just walk away from him. And it's just that small little thing, because in his mind, up until that point, I feel like in his mind, he just felt like this is just this feud and hatred between him and Swerve. And now that that's over, I'm just going to be Hangman Page again. I'm going to be old Hanger and go back to it. And the reaction was like, you don't go where you went and go back. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And now you're starting to see him embrace the evil, if you will. Like now it's almost reveling in the fact that he is this disgusting heel. And it's a great character, because let's be honest, I think a lot of people lost track of Hangman Page. And it's not his fault. He was one of the guys that everybody thought was going to be a breakout star in AEW, and he has been a star. But at some point in juncture, MJF became that top guy, and now Will Ospreay's become that top guy. Well, if you can't be the top babyface, hey, it's good to be the top heel. And Swerve on the other side, he's a great heel. And what happens with great heels, just like MJF, eventually you have to become a face. And that's what's happened with Swerve. So it was a great double switch at the right time to take, because think about it. We talk about this on Wrestling Night Live all the time. Swerve, you got to remember, he broke into this man's house and stood over the crib and his baby.
That's what I love about the story that they're telling, is that Swerve never turned, and he's never done anything babyface. And like Hangman, I think he's like the first heel that can actually cut a "you people" promo where actually he's like warranted, because he said it first, like, you guys were cheering this guy when he like broke into my house, like what is wrong with you all, you know? And like it does, like they've done a really good job with like telling a kind of like complex story.
Oh, it's an amazing story.
You know, that's the thing about professional wrestling, is you can do the most heinous shit for the longest time, but when the crowd decides that they like you, they don't care anymore. Like I don't know, maybe that's what Vince McMahon was counting on. But like, if you look at what's going on with Rhea Ripley and Dominic and Liv Morgan, Rhea should still be the heel in this situation. If you go back and look at where that started with Dom, she basically abducted him, assaulted him, and turned him into her pet.
And turned him against his family.
Stockholm syndrome him.
Exactly. And then, you know, he finally everything that he's been saying as a heel promo is like actually kind of heartwarming, where he's like, I finally found a woman who treats me for who I am, and everybody's booing the shit out of him, and it's like, what's wrong with you people? That you're going for the abuser here instead of the abused.
Even worse, Liv Morgan. She was justified. Rhea Ripley took her out. She was justified in what she did. So like, it's weird.
Yeah, so I always love that that Bret Hart promo, and that was like he goes like, oh, you know, Canada, like America sucks, like Canada's better, like we've got like universal health care, we got like gun control, and people are just like, boo. And it's just like, what are you guys doing?
You remember Daniel Bryan in WWE, like, his best
like
heel character was
champion.
It was just a guy who was a vegan who didn't want to ruin the planet, and everybody thought he was a monster. It's so fascinating. The crowd want to hate you until they want to love you, and then they want to love you until they want to hate you. It's so fascinating.
Well, MJF is the same. Remember, they had the whole crowd. "You're our jerk" was their chant. He's our, like you can't, and it's true.
Yeah,
but it's the U.S. crowd.
I find it so fascinating from like the 30,000 foot view, watching to see how the companies either fight the wave or ride the wave sometimes too.
Yeah.
Because you think something works so naturally, like say when Becky turned on Charlotte, nobody backstage thought that was going to go the way that it went. And so you have Becky going out there to cut this heel promo, and the crowd's just like, nope, we love what you did. Do more of it. And it's like, all right, I guess so.
I mean, she did that. I mean, her trajectory when people compared her to Steve Austin, I always said that was it was too perfect, and it was kind of the same, an accidental. Like, first of all, the crowd was kind of liking what you're doing, but then you have the accidental injury. Steve Austin has, he gets injured, and boom, it's a powder keg. And with Becky Lynch, she breaks her nose and she continues on, and the crowd just goes, this is who we want to be behind. We don't care who you want us to be behind. We want to be behind this person. And the crowd is going to be right 100% of the time. That's you can't fight it. You can try to steer away from and steer into it. The best performers can always bring the crowd back to where they want them, i.e. MJF, as soon as he wanted to be a heel again, or they were not doing that, oh boy, he got hated again. Roman Reigns was a perfect example. Crowd would cheer for Roman during that heel run with the bloodline, but man, when it came down to it, he knew exactly. Like I remember that the what was it, Elimination Chamber, wasn't it? With Sammy, and he has him up against the barricade, and he's looking at Sammy's wife, and he's working slowly, and he just looks at his wife and just goes, "I loved your husband, but now watch what I'm going to do to him." And it's just like that, very calm and collected. And you just go, wow, that is just evil. Like, how do you say that to a man's wife?
Yeah.
But that's how you get the reaction. And the crowd
sees that. Was the best thing that ever happened to the bloodline. Like, I feel like,
because
they were like, I feel at the time that story was kind of like, all right, guys, I feel like they're kind of in a bit that spot again. Like Sami Zayn, like, turned that, like, that's when when WWE really skyrocketed, when Sami Zayn stuff, like, he got,
they just let him go crazy. Just when you're feeling Uzi and just like letting do stuff, and you see like everybody break character, and it's like, what are you gonna do in that moment?
And it's just such a like a relatable thing of like trying to fit in, and like, I want people to like accept me, like, I want to be with the cool kids, and like, and ultimately, they don't accept you, and you realize, like, actually, I'm better than all of you guys, kind of thing.
It's almost like you rejected them. I wanted to be part of the cool kid table, and then I got there, and then I realized that you guys are terrible, so now I reject you. It's kind of like that. It's the reverse.
Yeah, and as much as I love Becky, and I think she would have been successful on her own, I think Nia Jax should get like 10% of all of her merch sales.
And she's on a run right now.
Now she's doing a great job. Like, that's why you got to keep with it. Sometimes there's a rough build, but then
it's hard. Like, that's why, like, also I hate the current climate of like wrestling fans online, because like everything needs to be like immediate, or like if something doesn't make sense like right now, it's like, well, this sucks, and it's like, well, I don't know, give it some time. Like, this is obviously the start of something, and we'll see how it goes. Or like
bringing it back with Clay said this earlier, to bring it back to that. You said about the match in the book and saying letting it breathe, and that's what fans need to do. Sometimes fans need to let the wrestling breathe. Let it tell a story. If we rush through Swerve and Hangman, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I don't care. They could wrestle another 1,000,000 times at this rate, and I'm going to watch every one of those matches with a big smile on my face, because so far I haven't been disappointed at all. It's not sometimes when people go, well, we saw this match 1,000,000 times. The only time that's a bad thing is if the match wasn't good.
Right.
Exactly.
And it's like, well, I was just going to say, everybody says they love long-term storytelling, but they only say it once the story is over. They're never willing to, because it's like, I years ago when I was working on something, I was going back and I was watching the WrestleManias that I hadn't watched. So like everything from like 2000 to like 2013 or something. And I was just shocked at how quickly everything moved. Like obviously you've got a year in between, but you're looking and I started going back and looking at all the storylines that I remembered from when I was watching as a kid, and it's like pay-per-view to pay-per-view, these things that in my head were like 2 years worth of story are like 6 months max, you know?
Yeah.
And it's the kind of thing that I think just gets harder for them to do. Like I've heard comedians talk about how 50 years ago, if you had an hour long set, you could do that set for 15 years because you were seeing new crowds, and it wasn't so immediately available to everybody. Whereas now every comedian needs to have a brand new hour set every time they do a special because of the internet, because of how often they're exposed to everybody, and people always want something new. And the same thing with wrestling. If you watch the McMahon documentary, they talk about how many times Hogan and Andre fought just on the road, and you used to be able to keep just doing that and doing it and doing it and doing it, but now you've got to keep fresh matches. You've got to keep things turning over, otherwise people start to get bored, even if what they're watching is really good.
Very true.
Well, like I say, it kind of echoes with wrestling, with hardstyle juice too, because it's not your average story. It's something you can always dive back into. There's a lot that's going on with this book. And before we let you guys get out of here, if this ever got picked up for a movie, who do you think you would want fan casted as Chris Castro? Because I have an idea who I think would play it.
So it's funny you should ask this, because I actually thought about this the other day, because I hadn't ever really thought about it. But it just popped into my head. I can't remember her name. Great start, Clay. The girl who played Supergirl in The Flash.
Oh,
she might be a little too old, but I think she would do a good job.
Okay.
I know I'm picturing her. I think that she would be a great fit. I really do. I can picture her in my head right now.
Because like for me, I always see Roxanne Perez from NXT.
Oh, sure. Yeah, actually, yes. That would, if you're going straight up wrestler, yes. That would be a great choice.
Just with the work that she's been doing in the ring with the character, like I could see her, completely pulling off Mona and really like taking that character some places too. And plus, like I said, the in-ring ability is right there. It's just something about like, for whatever reason, even though like Mona is a face and obviously Roxanne is a heel right now, like I can kind of see like, well, I think she could pull off both.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's another one who, when she first came up, I was like, yeah, like she's good. I don't understand why everyone's treating her like the second coming here. But since she's kind of gone heel, she's been really, really good.
Oh, absolutely.
And that actress's name is Sasha Callie, I believe is her name.
I just looked that up on IMDb. I was like, through the magic of IMDb, we're there. But yes, she did a great job in that movie as well. But yeah, Roxanne Perez is there's a reason. I was pretty sure they were going to bring her up to the main roster, and now that we're seeing the influx of talent that they're bringing in from outside the company into NXT now with Julia, Stephanie, Delta, that's the reason they kept her there, because that's a good welcoming committee.
Yeah,
you have your a top person who can get them in the door, get them over, and move on.
Rick, did you have anybody in mind when you were drawing her?
Not really. It was mostly just kind of like trying to, just kind of going for like, I just wanted her to like look small, and so actually like I thought of it was more like when in Dragon Ball and Kid Goku, and you see him when he's little compared to like, so that's kind of like what I was going for the most part. But actually Roxanne is like a really great comparison, and I did look at her at times for like, all right, because she's like super young. She's like, I think she's like 21 or 22 tops, something like that. So yeah, because she was a big prodigy, like even because like didn't she win like ROH Women's Champion when she was like 18 or something?
Yeah,
so, like,
she was 18. Her and Miranda Alizé had great matches in ROH.
Oh my god, yeah.
So they're tremendous stuff. Well, before just get a couple ones get out that right now, other than the fact that we hope that we get a whole universe off of Hardstyle Juice. Go out and get the comics, everybody.
Yes.
Let's make this happen now, please and thank you. Even for selfish reasons. Do you guys have any projects that you're working on currently that you can share with us?
Well, just to say that the easiest way to get the book, it's on Amazon, but if you want it all in one place, go to hardstylejuice.com. It'll take you right to the Amazon page. Got all 5 of the books right there. You can check them all out. I've got some stuff that's sort of picking up right now that I can't really get into. But if you want to hear me yap into the void some more, I've got a couple podcasts that I do. I've got the Rotten Horror Picture Show podcast, where we talk about films off the Rotten Tomatoes 200 best horror movies of all time list, and the Badass podcast, where myself and Sean Murphy talk about the Batman the Animated Series show.
Those are 2 podcasts I shall be listening to because I have interest in both of them. I'm a big horror fan, so as a matter of fact, as a matter of fact, tomorrow I'm going to see Texas Chainsaw Massacre for its 50th anniversary in the theater.
Excellent!
Nice. Tickets already.
That's a good time. That's a good time. Have you seen The Substance yet?
I have not seen that yet. I haven't had a chance. Is it worthwhile?
Very good.
It looked phenomenal, and then I was kind of like, I just got real busy, but I will make some time this weekend to go see it. Got a lot going on going into New York Comic Con, but yeah, I definitely want to see that. And we've already had it checked off on our bucket list. Well, not even bucket list. We're doing it to go see Terrifier 3, so that comes out in a couple weeks, right? Yeah,
excellent.
All right, Ricardo, what about you?
Projects, I can't talk about them. I got some stuff lined up already. I can't talk about it too much yet, but I think you'll probably start hearing about it soon. Something cool that I'm proud of that I did recently was I'm doing, IDW is doing that crossover between like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Naruto. So I got to do like 4 connected covers for that. So I'm proud of that. So check those out if you want, as they start coming out. I think the first one comes out in November, I think. So
you did the covers for all those AEW books that came out too, right?
Oh yeah, I did. I got to do that. That was cool. I did that for San Diego Comic-Con. Got to draw Swerve, Orange Cassidy, Tony Storm, Britt Baker, Darby, and who else? And Osprey. Yeah, for like the comics, the AEW comics that they announced in during San Diego Comic-Con. So that was pretty cool to get to do that. Getting some behind the scenes stuff of how things work over there. And if you're in New York area, be a New York Comic-Con this October, I think it's 17th through the 20th or something.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'll be there. If you're in Artist Alley, you can find me.
And
awesome. We'll definitely stop by and say hi because we'll be there too.
Yes,
I'll be floating around somewhere during that weekend. So
Nice.
Yeah. And everybody should be taking the homework assignment to go after the show. The liner notes are in, that you can go right to hardstylejuice.com and go get this series. Trust us. We will say this all the time. This series is something special because if you're a fan of pro wrestling, you're going to really enjoy this. If you're not into pro wrestling, this might make you a fan because this series has got so much heart, action, and drama. You're going to be caught up in it. And once you get to that ending of issue 5, which is out today on Comixology, you're going to be going, where is the issue 6? Where's the next chapter? That is how good this series is. You need to get on social media, put hashtag HSJ renew or something like that. We'll come up with something to really start pumping this because we want to see this book come back. Clay and Ricardo, thank you guys again for coming on the show. We definitely got to talk again soon.
Absolutely. And if you're on the fence, I don't know if I want to spend however much money on a wrestling comic. If you have Amazon Prime, which I know you do because everybody does, you can read it for free. So it doesn't even it's not even an effort. So please,
just
read the book, please. Read
the book and then go buy the book.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes,
exactly.
It's the easiest way to do it because we want to see this. We want to get a physical copy of this. Like, you need this book in your life. And the review will be coming out along with 40 other reviews from Nerd Initiative, this bullpen on nerdinitiative.com tomorrow. So we're definitely lining it up in the mix because we give you the best picks of the week. And this book is seriously one of the best picks of the week. And the series is one of the best of the year. So I can't recommend it enough. So guys, thank you again for coming on.
Thank
Rich,
you guys so much.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Anything we can do to help promote this. Seriously, this is one of our favorites here. So we have no problem screaming from the top of our lungs. Go get hardstyle juice.
Thank you. Appreciate
I
it.
second that. I third that. I 10th that. I millionth that.
Yeah,
Let's go.
Absolutely. For Rich and myself, thank you again for tuning in for another edition of Turn a Page. And we'll end it like we always do. When you're at the comic shops and you have a great issue on your tablet, because it's not out in print form just yet, but hopefully soon, like hardstyle juice, and you see somebody struggling to find something at the shop, hand yours off to them. Tell them turn a page. We'll see you next time.
Wait a minute. What's that line I'm supposed to say? Oh, I'm out.